Hello everyone, my name is Janis Purcell and I'm here today representing the Trenton City Museum at Ellerslie. I'm going to do a basic demonstration on needle felting. I'm a local Trenton artist and I've exhibited several times at the Trenton City Museum. My new medium now is wool. I've worked with several mediums over the past 30 years. From woodworking, ceramics, making concrete sculptures. But now I decided to turn the wool, which is a craft medium, I'm trying to elevate it into a sculptural medium. So now I'm going to discuss the tools that I use for the felting, which are my basic needles. And the needles come in little packages when you order them, and you could use them in several different ways. Now the needles run from size 32 to 42, and the higher the number is, the coarser the work will be. And you could really once you start stabbing the wool, it makes a very tight, firm piece of wool, but it also depends on what kind of wool. So we're not going to get into the technical part of which size needles to use with which wool. Today, I'm going to use either a 40 triangle needle or a 42 needle because of the merino wool that I'm using. And I will cover that in further detail once we get to the wool. As I was saying, the needles, when you order the needles, they come in little packs in these little envelopes, and you could either use them as a single needle, or there are many different holders. This is my largest holder, which holds 6 needles. If you're going to be working on something very large, or you want to do some fast work, you would start off with this. You have to always be very careful and aware that the points are very sharp. To change the needles, you just screw this out, screw this open, and the needles come right out. And you just screw it back together, and you're ready to go. Then I have holders that hold 2 needles at a time. You can also buy a little pen needle, which comes with the holder, and it's a single needle. That's a nice tool. And if you purchase some kits, the kits will come with a needle that has a rubber tip on top. So in the beginning, I started by using some finger protectors so I wouldn't get hurt too badly. But now I know how to position my needle and how to work it where I don't get stuck so much. You have to be very careful when you stick your finger, because the edge of the needle has barbs on it. So when you push the needle into the wool, it tangles itself and you pull it out, and that's how you start to do the felting. You go like that. I also have a tweezer available all the time, because the wool has some little pieces of hay in it sometimes. You know, wool is a natural product. The sheeps roll around in dirt. But all the wool that I purchase is washed, processed, dyed, carded, and prepared in different types that you could purchase. So we'll go over that with the wool. I also always have a scissor available, although you shouldn't cut the wool because then it doesn't look natural, but sometimes you have to do what you have to do. And I also use a very fine scale, because certain projects, especially wet felting projects, if you work on a project, you have to know how much wool you're putting into it in order to get you a thickness. Now, another very important tool are the foam bats. And I have several different sizes, as you could see. And this is what you use to apply the pressure against. You have your mat, your foam here, and you're going to start stabbing your wool. I just want to show you, this is my foam from my very first attempt. I don't know if you could see how much it's eaten up, but this is not what you want to see. I absolutely was stabbing the wool too hard, so hard that the foam was coming onto the wool. That's not what you want to do, because the point of the needle is only about 1/4 of an inch. You just have to do very fine stabbing in order to tangle your wool. And we'll go over that. So now I finally found out that you could put a piece of linen or canvas over the mat so it doesn't eat up your foam and your foam stays nice. Some people on the websites say use a dryer sheet. This makes the wool smell nice and it slides right off. And the wool does not have a smell. The wool is almost a neutral smell, but this just gives it that little scent as you're working. And I use all different sizes. This is a little sponge if I have to get into something. And also my main tool are my books. I use this book, Felting and Uniquely Felting, as my Bibles. This has all the information on the needles. It has samples of different wools, and it tells you what needle to use with the wool that you're using, the type of wool that you're using, and it actually tells you how long it would take to get a firm feel to the wool that you're using. So the books are very important. List all the types of wool, and again, the types of needles, and what kind of projects you could use with that particular kind of wool. I enjoy this because to me, it's a combination of technical work plus aesthetics. So now this is the tools. Now we'll go into the types of wool. Okay, now we're going to go over the wool, the type of wool, and how the wool is used. I'd like to just let you know that I use the company called Living Felt. They're located in Austin, Texas. They have a very extensive website, and they have all kinds of supplies. You get your wool bats, you get combination packages, your foam bats, and then all kinds of exotic and specialty wools like silks, alpaca, and a lot of different wools that I don't even go into yet. These are the wool. This is the wool that I use. This is a merino called C1. It's very soft, and I purchase it in large bats. That's BATTS, where I could just pull it off and work with it in a large sheet, spread it out if I like, or you could start pulling it and it just pulls very easily. This has a medium fiber. You could see as you pull it, you don't need to apply much pressure, and it pulls into long pieces. This is used mostly for needle felting, but it's also very nice to use for wet felting. This is a short fiber merino. Again, it just pulls apart nice, and it's much easier, and the fibers are short. This is also used for needle felting, but it is also used for wet felting. It felts very easily. If I just put some soap and water in my hands and started rubbing and agitating it, it will start to felt. That would take a long time. But you could actually see it starts to shape. When you use either one of these wool, you don't get much fuzziness. A lot of people don't like needle felted projects because they have a lot of fuzzy, but not these wools. Those are a different type of wools. The ladies in the UK, they use a lot of more natural, coarser wool. This is what's called roving. Now, roving comes like this in a big rope. They also have pencil roving, which is thin strips of roving like this, and it's good for outlining. Now, you could needle felt with this. Some people like it and some people don't like it. It's a little hard to get the fibers, but if I wanted to put an accent, I could pull it tight and make a nice line. Now, this is a little harder to separate because it's very long fibers, and you really have to tug at it a little bit, and you get fibers like this. So then for wet felting and nuno felting, that's N-U-N-O, is making wearable art. And when you lay out the wool for the nuno felting, you just pull it and overlap it, and it's much more technical. So that's how the wool comes, in either roving or bats. Now, this is another product, but this is used for embellishing, which would be decorating. This is the wool that's pre-felted already with a machine. The companies have big felting machines. They also sell home felting machines. That's just like a sewing machine. So because this is not totally felted, you could cut out shapes and different shapes or whatever you want, different designs, and that could be laid out on your back. It could either be needle felted or you could wet felt it, and it becomes part of the wool underneath. It's kind of a laminating process, surface design process, but this is real wool as opposed to a craft sheet. This comes from Michael's or one of the local craft shops. These are not, this is not 100% wool. It's not wool at all. It's acrylic. It could work. You could use it as a backdrop if you like. There's something that's called painting with wool, where you need a background. You could use this. But Living Felt also sells pure wool sheets. So it goes from pre-felt to total felted, 100% wool. If I was doing a 2D wool painting, I would prefer to use the 100% wool product. Now, I did some experimenting, which is always fun to do. I had a blanket, and I wanted to see if it was wool. It was an old blanket. I cut it up, and the way you can tell if you have a wool sweater or a blanket is cut a piece, put it in the washing machine, and see if it shrinks. If it shrinks, you have a piece of wool. This piece did not shrink, so it's part acrylic polyester. But you could still use it. I used it for this little heart display, and it just works very nicely. So you could go to the flea markets or different shops, secondhand shops, and find a lot of useful products. You could also felt onto burlap or linen, any type of material that the needle goes in and out of. It has to have a weave, will work for you. So now the last type of wool that I'd like to show is what people think I use. Now this is wool yarn. I only use the yarn for embellishing or putting fine detail. The roving is spinners spin the roving into handcrafted yarn. And the yarn comes beautiful hand-spun yarn in all different sizes and textures. And as I said, this is a cotton yarn, and I've used it before. It's very good. And then you have here silk yarn, which can also be used for embellishing.